Yes, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening. My name is Innocent Turyahikayo, and I am a graduate student at Islamic University in Uganda, doing my master's in public administration and majoring in local government, and specifically interested in community development. I am also a founder of One Citizen Movement, which is a platform of young people here in Masindi, focused on developing a citizenry, advancing democratic values and accountability in communities. I'm so delighted for this opportunity to present fellow members of this platform. And also, it has been a learning process since I joined IACD. A lot of resources that I've gone through, and it's a privilege today to present about community development. And our outline of the presentation will focus more about understanding community mobilization, drivers, structures of community mobilization, and I will focus so much in the context here in Uganda. And why should we have community mobilization, and the challenges of community mobilization. So, first of all, before we understand what community mobilization is all about, let me first read. Yes, like I said, understanding community mobilization and what entails in community mobilization. One first read for you one quote from Margaret, which says that there is no power for change greater than a community discovering what it cares about. And meaning any change in a community should hinge itself on the people to first understand what matters to them. And we cannot define community mobilization before understanding what a community is, because when you look at community mobilization, look at two aspects. We look at a community and also look at a mobilizer. And next, let's first understand what a community is. A community is a group of people that interact and support each other and are bounded by shared experiences or characteristics, a sense of belonging, and often their physical proximity. A community can inherently consist of a group of people, but cannot be solely established. We have to understand that communities come into existence as different people, individuals come together or share specific experiences or characteristics. A community cannot just be a person like an individual. There should be certain things that unite this kind of group. And communities can be both rural and urban, and the nature of communities vary from one to another. We understand there can be mobile communities, for example, nomads who can move from here to the other, but because they have those kind of shared experiences, characteristics, so they become mobile, and wherever they go, they are together and they have those specific characteristics. Some communities emerge from different circumstances. For example, smaller towns growing with different heterogeneous nations, heterogeneous populations, and become either complex. Some communities emerge as a result of circumstances. For example, immigrants. In Uganda, we have certain regions here where we have immigrants who come and settle in specific areas, and they form a community given their kind of characteristics, their needs in those same localities. Next slide. And like I said, we cannot have community mobilization not understanding between community and mobilization. So community and a mobilizer. And these two, community and mobilizer, like you see, form up what we call a community mobilization. And a mobilizer can be defined as that person who animates, who activates a community and performs roles such as facilitating, training, coming up with different tactics to see that communities are together, understand, and that's a mobilizer. And this leads us to the next slide, where we shall understand what community mobilization is. And of course, there are different people who have come out to define community mobilization, but we look at community mobilization considering the values and principles that empower community to develop and implement own solutions to challenges affecting their respective communities. When we talk about community mobilization, our interest is focusing on the people, to see how do we bring these people together, what do we give them, what values do we employ, what principles do we put in place to see that these people are able to develop and implement only solutions. We can also look at it as a capacity building process that empowers community members, groups and organizations to plan and carry out and evaluate their functionality towards community development. Next. Yeah, MASACOPS is an international development organization and looks at community mobilization as that process of engaging communities to identify community priorities, resources, needs, solutions in such a way as to promote representative participation, good governance, and accountability. And community mobilization targets vulnerable communities. And the aim is to see that there are self-initiatives that are initiated by those same people or stakeholders that come on board to see that they improve conditions in these respective areas. Community mobilization goes and sees deficiencies within communities, those who are vulnerable, to see how they realize their needs, how do they realize solutions that can act as interventions or help inform and shape an agenda of the service providers, or also look at lobbying, because if you mobilize communities, meaning you're going to make them understand where should we go in case we have such a challenge. Next slide. Community mobilization, like I've said, is more of a process bringing together as many stakeholders as possible, to raise people's awarenesses and also help them demand for a particular program. And emphasis is more on locally organized, planned, and community intervention where stakeholders collaborate on a range of complementaries. We also look at community mobilization. It can be either done jointly, for example, me, other different CD practitioners, organizations, or an individual or organizations. For example, personally, I have, as an individual development worker, I have gone ahead always to reach out to community development departments in my district. I intervene on different programs that they're implementing. I support them on how they can take over specific, how they can improve on some programs, help on mobilization, and meaning at one level, an individual, an organization, a platform can come in so that community mobilization takes effect. And the goal is to empower communities and enable them and control their own development. Next. So what are some of the drivers of community development? One, we are looking at participation. And one, for community development to really take effect and be meaningful, we need to see participation amongst the people. There should be inclusiveness, people should be involved in. You can't have a gap between you who is leading and those that you want to be led, or those that you want to own this kind of or agenda. And second, look at the issue of linkage, connection between the different people, different partners, there should be that linkage that if we want to achieve this, you can either go here, there should be that interlinkage between people, the community, and the needs or the challenges. The challenge should directly affect the people you're trying to mobilize to come up with a solution. Then commitment. It's about agreeing or pledging to do something, or the ability for people to accept that this is what we are going to do at this time. We shall offer in our support in this format, and that commitment is very, very important to see that community mobilization is achieved. Then the other one is partnership. Then partnership looks at working together. You cannot achieve community development or community mobilization process as an individual person. Remember, communities are amalgamation of different people. They are government structures. They are those who are controlling resources. So you have to be in touch with the different you have to be in touch with the different stakeholders, because if you miss out on one, that means you are going to lose out on the process. And the other one is accountability, accepting responsibility, having being accountable of your actions. For example, if you have taken up resources, you should be able to know how you're going to use them. You suppose in case of you've been allocated a task to accomplish, there should be that kind of self-consciousness to be accountable to the people, so that people have that kind of acceptability that this is happening. And using a case of Uganda, a lot of structures that have been put in place to see that community mobilization really is achieved. We look at from the center, we have the Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development. We have the Ministry of Local Government. We have the different community development structures at lower governments, where we have the parishes from down as they go up. So you realize that these have been understood. Then we have the Coordinative Bureau of the National NGO Bureau, which is at the center of mobilizing, inducting, and coordinating different non-government organizations that are either involved in community development and other development work. And we have the different networks of individuals and movements. Let's now also have the ICAD also global that is here. So these are a mechanism that have really been put in place, or that are in place, that are shaping community mobilization, or that are at the center of coordinating different people who are involved in community mobilization. Next. Then, just a minute. The stage of community mobilization. One, let's look at starting. Mostly, if we are going to do community mobilization, we expect that there is a starting point, which involves you to organize, involves you to identify, and involve different stakeholders of that specific interest or problem or challenge you want to address, or the community of people that you are going to go in. Then we have assessing. Mostly you have to understand that communities are associated with the problem associated with communities. You have to know what's there. You have to learn more about what community am I going to. You have to understand what could be the possible solutions towards this kind of problem. Then the other one is about planning, and involves prioritization of the problems and deciding on what to solve and how. Because when you go in a community, you will expect to have to find a number of challenges, problems, but through planning, you'll have to understand that which one should I address first, which one should I address last? And the other one is acting. So after putting these first 3 steps, next step is to act, take action, implement the identifiable solution towards the problem or the challenge you have identified, along with the people in a respective community. Then monitoring and evaluation. This one is very important, because if you don't monitor what you're implementing or what you're working on and evaluate, understand your performance, then you won't understand the results, because it's more about its focus is more on the impact, the results, and how to use those results to plan and do either more activities. And the other one is scaling up, and this entails either after evaluating, meaning you will have to understand, do I do more, or should I expand on what I've been doing? And these are some of the stages we can look into for community mobilization. Next slide. So why community mobilization? That is something very important. Why should we carry out community mobilization? One is community mobilization helps in building social networks. And social networks are vehicles of development, because you identify, as you grow, individuals in a community, you identify the strength of another person, you identify the weaknesses of another person, see how do you support each other, see how do you build yourselves. And these networks, social networks, help different programs to take effect, because if you're going to address this challenge, meaning if there's someone who has knowledge or strength in addressing a specific thing, it's going to help you. Then the other one, look at building local capacity. It helps in building local capacity to identify and address community needs, or let's say local ownership of development. So all initiatives that are started at the lower at a community level by people own them, and this ownership makes people have that capacity to respond always. Then the other thing is that shifting in power balance. Most times in our democratic processes, when leaders are elected, they tend to act from top. But where communities are mobilized, one, there's that shift that people tend to have knowledge, understand, and see what is happening, what's going on, what programs are being designed for them, and they come out to shape an agenda and also interrogate some of these programs. And we also see that community mobilization helps in addressing underlying social issues like discrimination, poverty, self-esteem. Most of our communities are poor or are unable to do certain things because they are not empowered. They don't have information. They don't know. But once people are activated, they are animated, they're given information, they are connected, they are linked up to other people, to other organizations, you realize that people will start to understand that this is what we can do. People will go from doing violence, will go from doing crime, will be motivated to challenge certain things, will embrace government programs. Then the other one, we look at establishment of systems of coordination and monitoring to ensure transparency and accountability. In most cases, let me give an example. Government in Uganda has been introducing a number of programs to ensure that there's transformed lives of people. But monies come and disappear, and monies are swindled, and people, the beneficiaries of these monies, remain silent. One, because they don't know these processes. There have been few people engaging them to know these processes. So once there's this community mobilization, people will have this. This process will shape systems of coordination and also monitor different programs that government has put in place and hold accountable leaders who are in charge. Then resource mobilization becomes more easy since it targets local resources. Development is communal. It's at a primary level. Therefore, people put in their energy, put in their time, and meaning there is a lot of self-reliance. Then we see the issue of linkage of communities and or members, community members and service providers. Like I said, that most times people are connected from those who give them services and those, them as beneficiaries and those who give them services. Because there is no person animating or activating the gap between these two people. And once community mobilization is done, it is going to ease, government's role, it's going to ease a duty bearer's role, because people are able to track, move, and link up with those who are in charge of their services. Have a more active and more informed citizenry working towards policy advocacy. Most policies that come up in our governments, in our institutions, in the end affect our people. In the end, touch on the lives of our people. And if people do not know, sometimes they fall into such traps. And there have been a saying that ignorance of the law is no defense. So if there is this community mobilization, it is going to awaken people. And like I said before, power shift from the authorities and consultants. Most times government hires consultants to come and train people, hires consultants to come and do different kind of works. And after they have done the work, they go back. They just come and talk or train on and they deliver on specific kind of issues. But once people are mobilized, empowered, then you are going to see that there's power shift from such kind of institutions. Next. So the challenges of community mobilization. One, now we look at the shortfall in capacity or expertise to continue with the program. And this happens in cases of reliance on external resources and experts to run a specific program. Let me give an example. Here in Masindi, we have an organization called the Water Trust. It is focusing on hygiene, water, sanitation, and it mobilizes communities it provides water. It provides water services in form of boreholes to rural communities that do not have access to clean water. But one of the challenges I've come to identify is that as they are mobilized, they mobilize some small monies to take care of this borehole in case it gets spoiled. But in case the borehole gets spoiled, they have to get an expert from Water Trust to come and repair, or liaise with government. Now, just in case if Water Trust pulled out, meaning there will always be a challenge of coordination to get that expert to come and repair these boreholes. And you, in the end, you realize that after some point, such a program can collapse. Then the other one is, in case of failure to have full participation of the community, the problem may rise again. Sometimes programs come up and they move out. How do we help people to get out of this? In Eastern Uganda, there have been always a campaign of ending genital female mutilation. And yes, campaigns come and go, but because there's no full community participation to end this practice, after the resources that have been identified and the stakeholders to see that this is put to an end, once the campaign ends, because the community has that cultural attachment, the issues rise again. You hear that cases now are emerging back. Why? Because there's no full participation of the community. Then the other one is that often community mobilization arises to address a specific problem in a community, not all needs. Therefore, while you're addressing one problem, you are going to realize another problem. And this is a challenge. You're going in a community to address the issue of children not going to school, then you're going to realize that there is poverty in the community. You're going to realize there is inaccessibility of health services. So it becomes a problem, and you are working on the same people. Then the other thing is that some groups of people face a problem of inferiority, hence fear to come out in public to express concerns about them. For example, health-related challenges and the concerned people. Let's take an example of the people living with HIV in some rural areas, because people feel it is so personal, and there are centers that are established and communities that come up to carry out sensitization. Some people feel cannot be part of that because it is so personal. The other thing that I once experienced was when we are looking out for parents for children with disabilities in communities. Some parents will not come out because of the trauma, because of the attachment they have had with the children while raising them up as they're suffering. So they feel they cannot fully express themselves about a certain thing. And this can be in form of health related, and maybe people who are minority groups in an area. So they feel to come out and relate with us might be a bit challenging. Yeah, next. So as we conclude our presentation, of course, community mobilization is, like I said, is a strategy that is adopted in community development to enable communities' own development initiatives. And it is not limited to us as community development practitioners. No, but in different socioeconomic and political spheres. We will have to understand that the state or government uses community development so much to advance its programs, to advance its agendas. And like I said, today, our government is putting a lot of resources to see that people's lives are transformed. And currently, they're having the parish development model, and it is a mobilization. They're using mobilization strategies to reach out to the people, and they are making it move down to the community level to be owned by people. They put some resources at the center at a parish level, which is one of the lowest level unit planning center of a community in local government, and have people at that kind of geography to see that people are involved, people participate. And community development is there to advance different development programs and also help achieve a collective goal. And it should be noted that a well-organized and informed citizenry or community shapes public policy, like I initially said, and contributes the success of any development initiative. Therefore, it is important to support and adopt community mobilization as a strategy towards sustainable development. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Innocent. Maybe we could appreciate him with an applause.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, and for guiding us through this discussion. Community mobilization, of course, anchoring the power of the people and what they care about as the critical pillar in mobilization, and of course also in community development. Pointed out, of course, the rationale for mobilization, the drivers, the structures, and of course also given us some of the challenges. And as you discuss the challenges, we also suggested some of the ways we can overcome the challenges and therefore deepen the levels of mobilization. And of course, I wouldn't want to become the discussant. I will open the floor for interaction with Innocent. The floor is open. Maybe we can take the next maybe 20 minutes or so.
Daniel, I would like to say something. Okay.
Yes,
Thank you so much. Okay. I took note of the challenges mentioned by our presenter in community mobilization. And I think this is a common issue even in other countries. For one, that sometimes people become dependent on the external consultants. And therefore, it is my concern that even among consultants who are helping people should be conscious enough that their mission there, that the purpose there is to build the capacities of practitioners so that they can do their thing on their own. We have to facilitate the process of helping them realize it, but in the long run, it should be their affair because in the first place, that is their country and we are there to support. Okay, the second point that I'd like to mention is always a question of sustained community mobilization. Sometimes, if you have noticed, I don't know if this is an experience of other practitioners, that people are mobilized for a specific issue. So when issues are responded to, the participation died down. Now, as practitioners, I think it is a challenge on our part to reflect on how our initiatives in community mobilization can be sustained. And from my experience, I would say that education and training is a very important component of community mobilization, whereby communities are made aware of their situation, being able for them to understand why they are poor, why they are doing things. Because it is only through their understanding that mobilization can be sustained. Thank you. That's all I want to say. And thank you also for the presenter.
Thank you, right, Benilda. I think that's in addition and supporting or elaborating what Innocent has said. And of course, amongst the drivers, that's where we also need to capture the whole aspect of the quotation from Whitley. People are going to mobilize based on that which they care about, and that goes into the values and also into what really they feel is the immediate need, what really is of so critical importance to them, so that it pains them so much, they value it so much, it hurts so much, whichever word you want to use. And so they feel they have to rise up and do something about it. And so communities, first and foremost, will self-mobilize even before the animators come on board, but based on that which they care about and that which is of importance to them. Yeah, the floor is open. Thank you very much.
Doctor, can I just add something about what Benilda talked about, the issue of sustained community mobilization? I think as CD practitioners, it's something we need to focus on because every time we come out, because there is a specific kind of problem. There has been COVID and people came into place. There is this and people come in place. How do we have a community that realizes that has a foundation to detect, also work on some of these challenges or priorities and needs? So it more informs of more of a fire brigade aspect, that is something then we have to come in.
Thanks, Innocent, that was really interesting to hear about your experiences. And I'm glad you made some political reference. I know that's a big issue in Uganda, as it is in many countries. So I'm interested to know more, what your feelings are, maybe other people as well. How do you cope with that political interference, where, so in Kenya, it's election time, and there reaches a point where it becomes very hard always to do it, almost any community development activities or community mobilization, because everybody starts to get mixed up with politics, and it's really hard, at that point, because any meeting you call can easily be misunderstood or manipulated. So I'd be interested to hear more how you kind of cope with some of those situations, because I know it's also been very tough in Uganda with recent elections.
Thank you, John. One, I have to give another personal experience that I'm a CD practitioner, and I participated in politics of this country as a candidate, and people found it hard to differentiate my work as a community development person and also as a politician. But like initially, like we're talking about the sustainability of community mobilization is very important. Our people we have to live on the true values of community development as we are doing some of these things, because politics is there temporarily. We shall have politics for 6 months, and in the end, our people will have to go back to their normal way of doing things. And the other thing is that the government of Uganda has structures that has been put in place. For example, the community development offices in every district, where we have different CDOs in a different sub-counties, and now they are recruiting parish officers in different parishes. So our programs should target some of these technocrats, some of these individuals, and to see that they continue, because politicians come and go. But these technocrats, these community development officers are in government, and they are attached people. They are non-political, though sometimes they are there to implement programs that are as a result of manifestos of a winning government. So as CD practitioners should work closely with community development officers or structures of community development in our respective areas, so that they have that continuity. And that is one of the methods that government had put in place to have this sustainability. But one problem I've realized that our community development practitioners, some of them not have enough resources to move, to reach out, and also do certain things. So there's need to encourage them, advocate for more resources into these offices, because for them, they are there, they continue working, even when the politics is off or it's on. And now that the political process is going on in Kenya, here we have a lot of challenges that come as a result of the activities their side, because we may understand that Kenyans who are running businesses here that are either in fuel, and fuel affects a number of services in our community, and therefore our people in the long run are affected in terms of service delivery. So we have to see that communities are mobilized to have initiatives that help them, and also separate the politics aspect and community development. But it's a bit challenging, since it is time of politics that government, the ruling government, introduces specific programs to help people, and dishes out a lot of monies, and people mix up this. So it is still tricky, but my interest is how do we give more resources to these technocrats who are put there, who are established to have these processes continue always. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And of course, that it's always a challenge drawing a line between political access to mobility and others, then we'll be able to empower them. Political actors who might be focusing on short-term concerns rather than the issues that are of critical importance to the community. Innocent, there are a few questions, I think 2 questions raised on the chat. One by Henry Gwaning is focusing on the issue of inferiority complex, and then of course there is another one by Maling on drawing a line between community mobilization and local resource mobilization. Of course, Ajidiri has made a comment, but you might want to say something or two, one or two.
the issue of inferiority complex is really is crucial in terms when it comes to community mobilization. One, what causes this? One, I talked about one can be a health concern, the other can be a result of minority. But as community practitioners and mobilizers, it is duty upon us to immerse ourselves. We don't need to go in communities and act from the top. We have to immerse ourselves in communities, make these people realize some of these challenges, talk to them. If it means going to them one-on-one, and that's the linkage I was talking about. Talk to this one, talk this one. So when you at the end of the day, you realize that you've built a network of people who have the same challenges and are able to come out. And then the other thing, the inferiority complex brings about having a mixture of communities. For example, in urban areas where you have heterogeneous populations, where small groups emerge, you have the illiterates, non-literates, you have these ones doing this, the other one. So it is us to dissect and soften up the interaction amongst these groups. And then also, there's also issue of local resource mobilization, community mobilization. I think these are not the same, but somehow related, because the local resource mobilization, you are targeting on how do you harness the potentials in a community to facilitate a specific issue. And of course, similarly to community mobilization, you are looking at empowering, you're looking at mobilizing, you're looking at how do you have this community work towards or develop a specific kind of solution to a specific kind of challenge. Back to you, Doctor. Catherine has a hand.
Thank you, Innocent. I think the other one was more as a comment. I will go to Catherine.
Thank you, Doctor, and I'm happy to be here. Innocent, that was a very good presentation. I really appreciate that. I hope we can all hear me. And I'm looking at that from a point of, you know, the disruptions that we have been receiving, like the COVID-19 disruption, and thinking at how the political climate, especially in Kenya, how can we merge, how can we gel community development into the disruptors that come in every other year in every part of the country, every part of the world. How can that be gelled in a way that we are mitigating it early enough, the disruptions early enough, and at the same time, we are probably looking at working out through the future scenario planning early enough, so that the gains that community development has had do not go down the drain when we have disruptors like COVID-19 or like politics. In Kenya, we have the voting happens in August, but you'd think that voting is happening today or tomorrow if you came to Kenya, because we are all out in the streets, a majority of us, and kind of like our daily lives are already starting to be disrupted. So I look at it from that point of a global approach, where we look at how we can flow the disruptors or those disruptors that come into the lives of the people in the group into what community development is doing, and have ways to mitigate that early enough, or have ways to ensure that we look at the opportunities, identify the opportunities, and take them up as a way of learning and growth. And I think COVID-19 has taught us big lessons. Let's see how we can do it with political and diseases and whatever other disruptors that come, climate change that comes our way. Otherwise, Innocent, that was very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Let's go to Jim.
Yes, thanks very much for the very comprehensive presentation. And I appreciate the situation in the UK is so different from many situations of the people who are here today. But in some ways, the notion of community mobilization provides a useful umbrella for other kind of strategies that might form part of it. So, for example, there's a great progress being made through the ideals and the principles of the Poverty Truth Commission, which we in a sense learned from Africa as a way of engagement and a way of people actually sitting down and engaging in relation to sharing of power. Alongside that, there's some good examples of the techniques of community organizing under this umbrella, of community mobilizing. So inside it, there may well be other kind of strategies that are worth pursuing. That doesn't take away anything at all from, the comprehensive presentation that we've heard, but in some ways, even inside community organizing, as the experiences here, there might be 4 or 5 or 6 themes being progressed by people using a community organizing kind of strategy. So it's just to add that to to Innocenti's kind of overview. But you may feel these things are inappropriate in your context. I'm just saying that's it's kind of happening here in the UK.
Thank you, Jim, and I think you bring an important perspective as we talk about mobilizing. We also need to be able to understand the community context in which we're operating, because then a different community context will inform what kind of strategies are going to be put in place in mobilization. And that is an important aspect. And even looking at the participation today, we can see we're coming from different regions and different places across this world, and therefore what might work in one place may not necessarily work in a different place. And so, as a community development practitioners, then we also need to be able to be sensitive to the context and the issues and the cultural perspectives that also come to bear in the process. Of course, the issue of hijacking of mobilization processes has also been elaborated on by John, who again has quite a bit of experience working in Kenya. And as we keep on talking about the Kenyan experience, it becomes very important because again, a mobilized community is already a ready constituency and a ready basket of votes for politicians. But it is us as practitioners then to be able to safeguard the interests of the community from such unnecessary and undue and transient interests. Thank you very much. We can have another intervention, maybe, and then we close in the next 2 minutes.
Doctor, the issue of disruptors can also be managed through always having being critical, and also our beneficiaries. We have to tell them more the difference and differentiate, help them differentiate between the politics and the community development. And like we have to do more of the education, more of the training of our people, since our interest is for them to own. So once they're empowered more, it means even when these politicians come along, the people won't accept them to intervene in some of these development programs. And since politicians have wanted us to ride over these initiatives, so it also rests upon us to empower more our people to understand that politics is there temporarily and the programs of development are there continuously. And if they accept politics to disrupt their programs, it will affect their growth and development.
Okay, thank you, Innocent. I think as we come to the close of this webinar 15, the edition of our webinar series, I will indicate that normally there are recordings that are available And Meredith will also make available the recording of this webinar so that we can continue again to interact with this presentation. So once it is processed, you can access it on the IACD website. And so thank you very much for being present with us. I'll make 2 announcements. And one, there is an International Community Development Practice book that's available for us again to interact with, not the sharing. And so it's still available at a good discount. It's one of the latest publications by IACD and based on the international standards for community development practice. You can get it at 20% discount. And so you're welcome again to support IACD. All the proceeds go to IACD. Then secondly, we have the World Community Development Conference coming up in June. Registration is already underway, and it's going to be a fully virtual conference. Registration is ongoing. Submission of abstracts is ongoing. So again, let's get ready to participate in another forum where we come together as a family of community development practitioners globally. Very soon, your magazine is going to be available. This is a Practice Insight magazine based on presentations done from the World Community Development Conference 2021. In the next few days, this edition is going to be released. It's going through the final edits. So in the next few days, it's going to be available. Again, these are resources that are going to be available for us to continue to make ourselves better in what we do with our communities. And I think lastly, I want to acknowledge the Vice Chair of IACD who is present with us. And I invite Catherine to make the final comment as we close.
Thank you, Daniel. That was proper hijacking again. I really appreciate what we are all doing for our communities and for ourselves and for the world today, for the world into the future, that you're going to leave behind a better place than where we are at right now. And the courage and boldness of each one of us and the insights that we keep sharing, I really want to thank all of us. And so much for Daniel for always leading us through this, for Mara for always being available and supporting us technically. And we're looking forward for a better world. That's, I think, the only gift you can leave behind, a better world for the future and a good world for ourselves today. And on behalf of myself and the president, Anna, I want to say thank you very much. And let's all continue with the work that we've been called to be. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vice Chair of IACD Board.